This year's draft class. Let's look ahead to your expectations for them this season. So, Mel, which draftee should have the biggest chip on his shoulder?
Field, I'm going to go to an entry. I'll give you an offensive lineman and a defensive line. Went back-to-back in the draft in the second round. I had to wait till night two, and I'll go to Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle, Oklahoma State, going to the Chicago Bears, going to Andy Dalton / Justin Fields, moving from right tackle to left tackle, where he did have 7 starts with the Cowboys. Here's a player thought maybe could be a 1. I think if the Bears would have taken him in a first, nobody would have argued. They get him in a second. He comes in with a lot to prove and a lot expected when you talk about protecting the quarterback and getting the job done, maybe for Justin Fields, certainly for Justin Fields moving forward. Christian Barmore, all he did was have 8 sacks. A lot of hurries and pressures, played at Alabama, yet waited until round 2 to hear Bill Belichick and the Patriots bring him into the fold. I think both those players will be highly motivated this year.
Player you see on your screen right now, Mel, is your rookie that will make the most immediate impact. Who is that?
That's Najee Harris. And running backs transition quickly to the NFL field. The Steelers need him. He won't fumble the football. He'll block, and he will run hard. He's a dynamic player. He gets some help from that offensive line. The defense will be strong. Obviously, the Steelers got to score some points, control things, keep that defense off the field. Najee Harris will be a key guy with the Steelers all season.
Let's do a little crystal ball action into Week 1. Which matchup of rookies will you be watching most closely?
I'm going to go to Monday Night Football. First Monday night matchup, my Baltimore Ravens with Odafe Oweh, formerly Jason Oweh. Now, Odafe Oweh out of Penn State. Didn't have a sack last year, but he's a tremendously gifted, freakish talent against Alex Leatherwood, a surprise first-round pick for John Gruden, Mike Mayock. Now the right tackle. How much will we see Oweh against Leatherwood? Monday Night Football, Baltimore at Las Vegas Raiders. That's one to really keep an eye on because Matthew Judon's up in New England now. He's not a Raven, and they need Odafe Oweh to be a real factor getting after the quarterback.
Mel, all I can say is I cannot wait for football. I miss it dearly. Good to talk to you. We'll be back with you in just a few moments here.
Got a feel.
We go from a couple of Alabama rookies to an Alabama veteran. Julio Jones' future in Atlanta remains in question as GM Terry Fontenot acknowledged around the draft that the team was open to taking calls on their all-pro wideout as the team navigates cap crunch. While there isn't any known momentum towards a specific deal, a trade becomes more likely from a salary cap perspective after June 1, which by my watch is just 11 days away. So Julio Jones may have been limited to just 9 games last season, but he was still one of the league's most effective receivers when on the field. He averaged the 6th most receiving yards per route run last season, trailing only the likes of Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Travis Kelce, Corey Davis. Not bad. If healthy, Jones remains clearly one of the league's best receivers. So Kimberly, we'll start with you from the news side of it. What are you hearing on where trade talks stand for Julio Jones?
Field, you said it. Everybody in the NFL knows that the Falcons are open to trading Julio Jones. The question, though, is what I hear back is a lot of skepticism that they'll be able to do that because everybody knows they want to. And obviously, the Falcons need to clear cap space. They want draft picks. They want a lot for Julio Jones. As you just documented, he's still a very good player when healthy. But from a negotiating standpoint, if you know the other party is really desperate, how much do you feel like you have to give up? I think this is going to be a team, if he is traded, this is going to be a team that feels like we are just a key piece away from a Super Bowl, being a Super Bowl contender, or a team with a young QB who knows Julio Jones would help their young QB out tremendously.
All right, so Damien, let's get into the cap stuff for a minute, a little bit more, and then ask about the football side of it. The Falcons can't even sign their rookies right now because they have so little cap space. It's around $500,000 at last check. So we know there's going to be some sort of maneuvering of contracts one way or another to get guys signed up, and that doesn't even include what they need to go into the season with. That being said, I understand that Julio Jones is one of the cards they have left to play to create some cap space. But is it a smart move to try to move on from Julio Jones, who, as we've talked about, at his best, is still one of the game's very best?
No, Phil. I mean, I look at the moves. I know they restructured Matt Ryan, restructured his contract this offseason. So clearly, they had an opportunity to draft a quarterback in the draft at number 4, but they restructured Matt Ryan. So obviously he's in their plans as far as the future is concerned. And when I just look at the weaponry that the Atlanta Falcons will have potentially going into the season. You got Kyle Pitts, you got Calvin Ridley, and you got Julio. You could potentially have Julio Jones. I mean, when you're talking about this upcoming season, with 2 more playoff spots available and the weaponry that the Atlanta Falcons could possibly have at their disposal, this is a team that could possibly find its way into the playoffs. So, man, I mean, I wouldn't want Matt Ryan, my BC brethren, to be without a big weapon that he's had by his side for all these years.
So, Damien, certainly they don't pay GMs to make the easy decisions. They pay GMs like Terry Fontenot to make the difficult ones. If he and Arthur Smith decide that a Julio Jones trade does make sense for their future, is there a team or two that you say to yourself, I'd love to see them make a splash to acquire Julio?
Yeah, man, a couple teams come to mind for me. One is, what about the team up in New England? They've made a bunch of moves. They've signed a couple wide receivers, a couple tight ends. They seem like they've signed a couple of everything up in New England, but they don't have a guy like Julio Jones. Okay, they don't have that guy. Julio Jones is an alpha, is a number one. And if you think about it, Phil, that's like the one position that New England has notoriously just haven't developed throughout Bill Belichick's tenure in New England. And to be able to get a guy like Julio Jones in that offense, boy, watch out. And then obviously for another team is Green Bay. I mean, listen, a lot of people have been talking about, okay, placating to Aaron Rodgers. What can I do to sweeten the pot? What can I do to, make things better between Aaron Rodgers and the organization? Okay, how about bringing a guy like Julio Jones to pair with Devontae Adams? I think that would be a nice sweetener if you're trying to get Aaron Rodgers, back on the favorable side. If you're the organization, to pair those two up, and they've been knocking on the door the past couple of seasons with back-to-back NFC Championship games. That would be sweet.
A potential Julio Jones trade might send a few general managers into the couch looking for cap space wherever they can find it, because he's due a lot of money, and a lot of teams have already made their investments for this year. But we're talking about a player who's averaged over 95 receiving yards per game in his career. That's literally the most in NFL history. Hey, so new Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford says other QBs changing teams helped him make his move to L.A. We'll tell you next why our crew says Matthew Stafford, but he's confident in the adjustment. Here's what he told the LA Times about going to LA. Different scenario, but even Tom Brady last year, going to a new team and a different coach and a new way of doing things and having success. That's something that makes you feel good after you make a decision to move on. Seeing Brady's success surely makes Stafford happy with the move, but upgrading the team around him also likely plays a big factor. Stafford leaves behind a team in Detroit that ranked in the bottom of the league in rushing, on defense, and in pass block win rate last season. Yikes. And with the Rams, he joins a team that ranked top 10 in all 3 areas, including the NFL's best defense in 2020. All right, and that's all great, and certainly the pieces are around him to be successful. But Damien, I ask you this. Is Matthew Stafford under the most pressure of any quarterback in the league right now?
Hell yes, he is. We've been talking about Matthew Stafford being with the Detroit Lions organization and the fact that basically the organization has been holding him back, and he's been putting up gaudy stats, gaudy numbers. We've talked about all those things as it relates to Matthew Stafford. But the one thing Matthew Stafford hasn't done really is win. He hasn't been a winner in the National Football League. Now he goes to the Los Angeles Rams. Okay, he has Sean McVay, guy who's a coach he's a young offensive mind who's been to the Super Bowl. They got a bunch of weapons on offense all around him. They got a defense that was number 1 in the league last year. So there are no more excuses for Matthew Stafford. And I know Dan Orlovsky probably watching somewhere. He's because he's like the number 1 cheerleader for Matthew Stafford. And I'm just here to say, listen, I don't want to hear a damn thing from Dan Orlovsky as far as an excuse for Matthew Stafford this year, because to me, it's nothing but Super Bowls for the Los Angeles Rams moving forward.
Now, Damien brings up a good point. A lot of pressure on Matt Stafford. But can I also say, you mentioned all the reasons why the Rams are such a good team, and Matthew Stafford is just being the added piece. But what about Sean McVay? Has he not had a lot to work with? Since that Super Bowl, he was built up as that baby genius, right? What happened when he faced the real veteran genius in Bill Belichick in that Super Bowl. Belichick made quick work of him and the Rams. So I completely understand and I agree with you that Matt Stafford has a lot of pressure on him. But I think over the years, Sean McVay has skirted a lot of the blame. It's clear based on the moves, getting rid of Jared Goff, sending him to Detroit, that the Rams felt like the quarterback was really the issue. We're going to see this season if that's the case because Sean McVay hasn't done anything with a really good roster.
Yeah, the Rams are about as close as you can be to being all in the NFL. Of course, they traded 2 first-round picks in this move. They don't make a first-round pick again until like 2049, which is a good reason why we should bring back in Mel Kiper Jr., the man who will never have to analyze a Los Angeles Rams first-round pick. Let's take to some quick reads, Mel, and tell us if you were these teams with rookie quarterbacks, when would you be starting them? We're going to start in San Francisco with Trey Lance.
Never, but he would play a major role with Jimmy G. He would be coming in like Lamar Jackson did with Joe Flacco. He rushed for 1,100 yards a couple years ago at North Dakota State, 14 touchdowns. Getting him acclimated that way. If Jimmy G gets hurt, he's ready to go because he's already played and those teammates know what he can do. Coming from the 1AA level with only 17 starts, perfect scenario. Get him on the field right away as that accent piece with the 49ers. Justin Fields, you could do the same thing with in Chicago because of his running and skills and that athleticism. Then if Andy Dalton falters, maybe it's in week 4 against the Detroit Lions, maybe week 5 at Las Vegas. If Dalton's not getting it done and you're losing games, you know Justin Fields already on the field again. Same scenario with Trey Lance. He would feel more comfortable. His teammates would know him a lot better. Mac Jones, to me, is different than the other two because he's the guy, he's the pro-style pocket guy, the Brady type. Cam Newton, arm strength isn't better, accuracy doesn't improve, then you can go to Mac Jones. You don't want to go to him week 4, Tampa Bay, New England. You don't want to do that. But week 5 at Houston could be the spot for Mac Jones, or maybe even in week 1 if Cam Newton's not a lot better than he was last year. But Mac Jones, to me, cerebral. He'll get the offense down whenever he's ready. I think it's within the first 5 weeks if Cam Newton's not getting it done.
As we know, quarterbacks that are rookies are always under a lot of pressure to start soon, if from nowhere else other than the fans. But Damien, if you were looking at those players that Mel just highlighted, which one do you think has the best chance to start ASAP?
Man, I'm tending to lean toward Justin Fields. Listen. It's make a great time in Chicago. It's make a great time in Chicago. Andy, Kimberly, you can't throw Andy Dalton out there and think that's going to get it done if you're Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, okay? That's not going to get it done. Listen, if you're going to go down swinging with your guys that you moved up to go infuse this roster and infuse this offense. So Matt Nagy, he was supposed to be a guy that knows how to work with quarterbacks and get the most out of their quarterback. This is the most talented quarterback that he's had since he's been in Chicago. Go out there, put him out there, make it happen.
All right, listen, Damien, I've only been at ESPN about 15 months, right? But I know not to disagree with Mel Kiper. Mac Jones is the quarterback who should start first out of all of them. And I hear you on Andy Dalton. I hear you, brother, especially because they said he was QB1 and that changed real quick. But my thing is, if you're going to draft a QB in the first round, like, your job is to develop him, and you need to make sure that he's ready. No knock against Justin Fields, but it's about his development. It's not about Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy trying to keep their job. That's not fair to the kid to throw him out there before you know he's ready. Is he better than Andy Dalton? Will he be better than Andy Dalton? I believe so. I think we all agree. But just because they need to go down swinging doesn't mean that you should just throw him out there because Andy Dalton's not that great.
Yeah, Kimberly, I'm with you. As far as Andy Dalton and the situation there, could this be Alex Smith with Patrick Mahomes? But the difference is, I think they can get Fields on the field and let him play and be that accent piece, like I say Lamar Jackson was in Baltimore. Same thing for Trey Lance. And if, in fact, Andy Dalton's not getting it done, that Week 4 game against the Detroit Lions at home, knowing you got the Raiders the following week on the road, that's a spot to get Justin Fields in for good. He's no longer an accent piece. He's the man, and you never turn back once he gets the reins of that football team. But they can get him ready and feel like the offense is a lot better with that dual threat complementing Andy Dalton. My thing is, guys, if Andy Dalton falters, then you go to Justin Fields. I think they want to have that happen a little more quickly than maybe some people think if Dalton, like I said, isn't winning football games because they feel like they're a playoff team.
Hey, Mel, wasn't the Chicago Bears the same team that tried to trade for Russell Wilson this offseason? Almost pulled that trade off. And now they're going to fall back to Andy Dalton? You think that's who they want to roll with? I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
He was a decent quarterback, Damien. You know, he was a guy got that team to the playoff. Plateau quarterback needs a lot of talent around him, but I think the Alex Smith, Mahomes blueprint is still there. The quarterbacks have had great success, did sit as rookies, so there's always that tap dance. You always are tempted, but it really depends upon how they're playing. I just think with Lance and Fields, the ability to get them on the field and acclimated as that dual threat change up to what you have with your starter with Dalton and Garoppolo is the way to go. Whether they'll use that as a way to incorporate these guys as rookies into the NFL, we'll see. It's going to be awfully fun and entertaining to watch and see how they play it out.
Well, patience can be a virtue, but coming up next, we're going to hear from a quarterback who learned through trial by fire as a rookie.